This is TWiT.
Now, we actually heard a little bit about the hotels in Las Vegas, how they weren't taking any chances when it comes down to big security and that hacker conference that was there in town there, especially Caesars Palace. Now, I wasn't there, but I did see a bunch of streams of tweets coming from attendees complaining about random searches and sometimes seizures from their rooms in the hotel. Now, in fact, I saw several tweets about individuals being quoted banned from ever returning to Black Hat at Caesars Palace because they didn't cooperate or comply with the security individuals. Now, there were always two sides to this story, but it sometimes sounds like they were actually using bullying techniques to ensure attendees and residents stayed in line during the conferences. To me, it could either go either way when it comes to bullying. Now, I want to throw this over to Curtis because, I wasn't there. Did you see this while you were there?
Well, it's interesting because I heard a lot of people talking about it. I did not stay at Caesars because I had been at Black Hat earlier in the week. I was staying at Mandalay Bay. I continued to stay at Mandalay Bay through the weekend, mainly because I was too lazy to pack up all my stuff and move. I did find it fascinating, though, that Mandalay Bay is the hotel where the tragedy, the shooting occurred only a few months ago. So you would expect that they would be the highest security venue on the Strip. If they are the highest security venue on the Strip, then they do it in a much more subtle fashion than they were doing it at Caesars Palace. I do think that at least someone at Caesars panicked. They decided that all of these hackers coming in must be up to no good, and they just panicked. I think it's going to end up costing them a fair amount of money because Dark Tangent, the person who organizes DEF CON, has already announced that the conference next year will not be at Caesars. This was out of hand. Now, hotels everywhere have announced policies basically saying that if you have a do not disturb sign on your door for too long, they reserve the right to go into the room and look around. After what happened in Las Vegas, that is an entirely reasonable and understandable response. But what was going on at Caesars was not that. Like I said, at the very least, someone on the Caesars staff lost their mind and decided that the only response was one that was way over the top, super intrusive, and in some cases bordering on abuse, especially of female and non-binary gendered guests.
Right. I don't know about you, but I just wouldn't even keep anything in my room as it is, let alone put the do not disturb on there. But that's just me. Now, Heather, you were there as well. Did you see any of this? Did you hear any of this? Do you experience it yourself? And
I did hear quite a bit about it, just as Curtis did. Certainly, my Twitter feed blew up about it. And like Curtis, I opted to stay at the Mandalay Bay. Although I did hear that Mandalay Bay, that there were DEF CON attendees at those locations. So it wasn't just at Caesars that some of this was going on. And certainly the walking into a room without knocking, and especially if you're a female traveling alone, is pretty disconcerting. I agree with Curtis that I think at the very least somebody at Caesars failed to consider their audience. Bullying techniques might work with some people, but if you've got a poorly identified security officer with an iron-on patch on his shirt and something that looks like a plastic ID that without a name on it or anything, that's going to ring some bells that you're not going to get immediate cooperation from this type of audience. And they pushed back, and I think rightly so. Right. Yeah, actually, I was reading that there was some people that were saying, hey, people are actually exploiting this. Obviously, we're at a hacker conference. People are going to exploit processes and protocols. And they were, like you were saying, they were having people dress up like security individuals. They didn't have any badge or anything. And they were pretending like they were trying to do a search of people's rooms. They were knocking on people's doors. And so people were freaking out. They were calling security and freaking out.
I don't know, Cheeber, what do you think? Was this just a knee-jerk reaction, or do you think this was, should they have done this?
No, this is bad policy. No matter how you look at it, it's really bad policy. Let's put it this way. I am ex-law enforcement, and there's a very, very good reason why law enforcement organizations spend so freaking much money on badges and why it's so hard to get a replacement badge. The idea is you need credentials that are hard to duplicate. You need credentials that inspire confidence. And when you start hiring a lot of temporary people, for God's sakes, cost of security isn't horrible. You're hiring people because you want to protect your property, you want to protect your guests. Someone forgot this. And even if you're hiring temps, you need to do some vetting. So I'm sorry, Caesars. You guys have forgotten that you are calling these people that are staying on your property guests. You need to treat them like guests. Treat them with some respect. Treat them, especially their non-binary gender guests. Come on. They're sensitive enough as it is. Be nice about it. Law enforcement has had this kind of situation happening to them an awful lot over the hundreds of years that we've had, organized law enforcement. And they've learned a lot of lessons. Now, your security forces a lot of the heads tend to be retired or injured law enforcement that have been forced into retirement. Come on, you guys have the experience. Use it. Train your people. Spend a little bit of time. Sensitivity training is mandatory at almost every law enforcement organization I've ever worked with. And Caesar's, time for retraining.
Right. I think so too. I think there's a lot of professionals. Obviously, there's going to be people who pay to go that they're not professionals. They're college students. They're just people from the industry, or just not even people that are from the industry. They're just people who are into tech and into hacking, and they decided to go. So you're going to have different levels of tiers of individuals there, but you are going to have professional people. In fact, some of the tweets came from people who are security experts at Google and other companies. They were saying they felt kind of bullied and monopolized on that front. So I think that this is definitely something that these companies, these organizations, they need to think about, because I think when people feel bullied, they don't want to go back. They don't want to be part of that. And that's even beyond the conference. It's going to be, that's going to be beyond the conference itself. Now, Curtis, I want to throw this over to you. When you have a hotel room, you travel a lot. Do you feel that you have of expectancy of a level of privacy when you have a room like that?
Oh, absolutely. And courts have said that that expectation of privacy is not misplaced. Now, you don't have absolute privacy within the confines of your hotel room, but neither do you give up all of your Fourth Amendment rights. So it is a balancing act, and what we saw here was someone who forgot the balance. And now this is something that I'm sensitive about, because on my very first business trip back long ago, I was robbed in my hotel room. I woke up one night to suddenly notice that a light was on. I rolled over in bed, and there was someone sitting on my couch going through my pants to get cash and such. Fortunately, they did exactly the right thing at that moment. They got up and left. But believe me, that experience sensitized me to these issues. I know what it's like to feel terrified in your hotel room. I know what it's like to feel that you don't have basic security. And both of those things are wrapped up in the very word hospitality. When an organization like Caesars gets the balance wrong, they forget which industry they're in. Now, yes, it's important that all of the guests at a property feel safe and secure, but that means all the guests, not just the ones who don't happen to be going to a particular con. this was unreasonable. And I think that Caesars deserves every bit of the approbation and community shame that's coming down upon them. Perhaps this will be an educational moment for them, and it won't happen again to another group.
Right. Now, Heather, what do you think? Is this making them a target now? I mean, now that people feel a sense of community when it comes to these conferences, they're, like Curtis said, they're sensitive. So, could this create them as a target now going forward, even in future Black Hats and DEF CONs when they don't even have the conference there? Could this make them a target and make them vulnerable?
Well, I think anytime a group of InfoSec people invade a space, they get attention. But actually, I'd like to take it back. I don't think that this is about security, such as it is. It's about the way it was implemented. There's nothing related to security that says that it's okay for a hotel employee to walk into a room unannounced without knocking or just badging themselves in. That's not about to a place that there was nothing reported. There was no wellness check that they were trying to do. Going in and searching rooms and taking pictures of the rooms and making jokes about sharing them on their personal Snapchat, that has nothing to do with security. That has everything to do with just a violation of privacy. I have nothing wrong with increased security and taking the appropriate steps. And actually at the Mandalay Bay, I did see there was some increased security. It was a little bit more laid back, but there were canine units that were going through the convention center periodically. There was an armed guard in the elevator bay. I'm pretty sure 24/7, and that's okay and that's appropriate. It seemed like they were particularly targeting DEF CON attendees, and Caesars just sort of got a little bit out of hand with the way they went about it.